Why do some brands become part of our culture while others remain obsolete? Why is it that some brands come to represent entire categories while others remain forgotten? It all comes down to branding. And today's guest has spent years answering those questions. Professor Vani Gupta Dandia is one of India's leading branding and marketing experts. She's the founder of Cherry Peach Plum Growth Partners, and she's a professor of branding and consumer behavior at Ashoka University. I took her courses. And so in this episode, we dive into what a brand actually is, how challenger brands can take on established ones, whether celebrity endorsements really matter, and how some brands grow to become iconic parts of our human experience. And so here's my episode with Professor Vani Gupta Dandia. I was preparing for this podcast and I came to know that your first commercial was with Adidas and with Sachin Tendulkar. Can you take us into that?
So I was very, very lucky. I was very young. It was my first job ever. And it was probably the best experience that I could get in those very, very early days. And the good thing about production at that time was that everything used to be done by hand. Everything was planned literally in small huddles. We were a small team. I had the good fortune of being a part of that small team, and I saw everything from very, very close quarters, like the discussion on why Sachin, the how we will celebrate cricket, what Sachin meant for India at that time. We're talking about 1998. This commercial came out in 1999, and why Sachin and cricket would be the right platform to launch Adidas in India. Now, the process of the production itself, you see at that time, communication, while there was email, most of the communication used to happen on fax. And very madman style, my boss would write long notes to the production house on what is important as production points, what we must cover, how, why, etc. And then we used to get a reply back, and it used to be great fun for me as an AE at that time. I remember just standing by the fax machine and looking at that report. So you fax a piece of paper, then you get a report saying delivered. So I used to be the one in charge who used to put in the fax, then wait for the report, then run to my boss with it saying, here is the report. Then he'd give me another piece of paper and I'd put that in the fax. Now in the process, of course, I was reading everything. For me, that was learning. Then that apart, there were some hilarious incidents which should probably not go on record, I guess, even 25 years later. But all the negotiation between the client and the production house on monies, what should be communicated to the client, what should not be communicated to the client, how we will position some stuff to the client, all of that I saw from very close quarters. The production itself was beautiful. It was the first time that technique, it was called, what was it? Stop motion, or where so he was batting and we had like this whole circle of cameras all around him. And all of those cameras were simultaneously taking the shot. In fact, in your podcast, if you can, you should show the commercial. It is such a beautiful goosebumpy commercial. And how, through the script process, every little slice of that commercial used to be discussed. Do we need the nun with the rosary? Do we need so at that time, cricket was everything. And of course, everything was watched on TV. And it also harks back to that time when, we didn't have OTT at that time. And if there was an electricity outage, or if there was a problem in the reception, you suddenly see like static on the screen. And if that appeared at a very, very critical time when, a big shot had been hit, what it meant for the nation, and so that kind of madness for cricket was basically captured in that commercial through the lens of Adidas. It was a really goosebumpy commercial. Of course, I got to interact with Sachin Tendulkar. He was such an unassuming, simple guy. He didn't, he had no fuss about the changing room or what he'd wear. He was just so easy to deal with. He could have been just about anybody. He could have been just another guy on the milling around while we were. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that he's Sachin, he could be just anybody. He was so simple and he was so easygoing. He was just such a joy to work with. He's just the loveliest person. So yeah, that was my little learning as an AE.
I've heard stories of him being in elevators and people meeting him, and I hear the same thing that he is just a very,
He
just a
just he
gentleman.
just he could just be anybody at all. He has no airs. And at that time in particular, I remember because I was milling around and I went into the changing room. There was this little room actually we had in the middle of a field. It was really just a small little room. And I said, I don't remember. I used to call him Sachin or Sir, but I handed a T-shirt to him and I said, "You have to wear this, not that." So he just immediately took it off and wore this. And he says, "Is this looking all right?" I said, "Yes, this is what I've been told. This is what you're supposed to wear. This is fine." And then he said, "Anything else?" And then he picked up his bat and he said, "Okay, I'll go and take my position." I said, "No, no, please wait over here. We'll wait for the production. We'll wait for the director." Then the director came. So he was just very cool and easy.
Professor, this makes me think about celebrity endorsements. We're right now 26 years from that commercial. Do you think celebrity endorsements still play a role today in advertising?
100% they do. But I think a lot of what I see, the use of celebrities is very warped. So, firstly, as consumers, I feel our relationship with celebrities has changed. The awe factor, I feel, has changed a bit because celebrities have become a little more accessible now in the sense that you see them on social media. You have more access to what their lives look like. There's just a lot more information and content out there. So, that whole thing about, oh my gosh, and I wonder what this person is like, all of that, which was at that time, in my time, is less so. That's number one. Number two, um, where we are going wrong is that a lot of brands use celebrities to get recall is all right. Recall is all right, but the manner in which celebrities are used for a lot of ads I see is that the brand becomes secondary rather than the primary hero in the ad. And you can it's the worst service to your brand to make the brand look like it's second fiddle. Like the brand has become either an extra or a supporting actor in the. I've seen a lot of, if Hrithik Roshan is good at dancing and everybody likes to see him dancing, let's make him dance. And then suddenly you'll see a pack shot in his hand, or the pack shot comes and goes. you know or I think one of the few brands that's done it really well and has stayed consistent over a long period of time is Hyundai with Shah Rukh Khan. Very, very, very smart use of celebrity advertising right from the time that he was first signed on, and then been consistently used. The other problem with brand managers and the marketing fraternity in general, I see, is this obsession with signing up new celebrities and new faces as you know as time goes on. I mean, we've done it on Kurkure as well, which I don't think was the smartest thing to do. Even today, the one face that is most remembered with Kurkure is Juhi Chawla. She was our longest standing asset. See, the thing is, a celebrity can become a part of your brand, becomes a part of your brand asset if utilized well. Like the case study that we did in class with Jadot, Dior. You see, Charlize Theron has been with uh, Dior for over 20 years. The way in which she's been used, she has become an integral part of the brand. Um, and there is no way that you would confuse that particular perfume with any other, or that you would confuse that commercial with any other. She has helped build a very, very distinct identity, which one cannot mistake to be any other. The problem today is if I see an ad, I've seen 5 ads of Shah Rukh Khan, and if I'm not able to tell which ad is for which brand, at the end of the commercial, if I remember Shah Rukh Khan but I don't remember the ad, then that money has been utterly wasted. Then I've merely made the celebrity more famous and I've done jack shit for the brand.
This is especially true for mega endorsers, right? I still don't understand why mega endorsers, uh, celebrities that get a lot of advertisements and take all of them. I don't know why they still get offers. At least that's something I can't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why I think it's just poor scripting, it's the lack of a brand idea, it's laziness. It's not thinking through how my brand will come out as the first hero. The the celebrity has to serve the brand. It can't be the other way around.
You mentioned Kurkure. That's something I wanted to get to, and we can get into it right away. That's one of those iconic brands, and that series of ads with Juhi Chawla is one of those iconic ads that I grew up with. And so, can you take us into that journey? Because it's so interesting, at least for me, to hear about what happened behind the scenes, especially an iconic ad like that.
So I'll tell you, sadly, when I came on the brand, Juhi Chawla had already moved on. In fact, we had decided to phase out Juhi Chawla, which I don't think was a very smart thing to do. As a company, for various reasons, we wanted to bring in younger faces, and we brought in the new Kurkure family, and that was actually my first real hands-on experience on what a celebrity can do to a brand and also what damage it can do to a brand. Like when we had Pariniti Chopra associated with Kurkure, we got very, very stark feedback on why Pariniti is not the right fit. After she was exposed and we put out those commercials and we did our equity studies, we saw that a lot of values that the brand started to acquire were from what people perceived Pariniti Chopra to be. Now you see, Kurkure had been built as the ideal Bahu brand, but this Bahu that was Juhi Chawla had the license to take pot shots at the mother-in-law, at everybody. She was very, very hatke. She was very bindas. There was an effervescence about her. There was an endearing, adorable quality about her. She could make you laugh. She could make all of Indian society look in the mirror and laugh at their stupid traditions and rituals, and and she could make all of India laugh at things that would otherwise be taboo. And that was the beauty of that brand, which is why that brand became the brand that it it treaded this line of humor, which was a very dangerous line in the sense that we could mock, not mock, but we could get people to laugh at themselves without it becoming derogatory. So now, when Pariniti Chopra came, suddenly people started to say that this is not the Bahu that I would want. There is a little bit of something cunning about her. There is a little something that I don't entirely trust. And a lot of such negative values, which we realized, gosh, we would have, I mean, from whatever homework we had done when we signed her up, it seemed to be an all green. But when the commercials went out, we got to hear these things, and that had a rub off on Kurkure. So what I'm saying is, Juhi Chawla was beautiful. She brought a lot of her personality on the sets. She used to have there were there almost at every shoot, from the stories that I heard, she would have some little tweaks to make to the script. She would give creative inputs to the production house, to the team, to the creative team, to the director, to the DOP, on what could be done differently and how we could maybe change this line, and all of that added a lot to the script, the story, the humor, the brand, which all of which we lost when we lost her. So maybe if there were a way that we could have retained her, continued with her, we never got that humor right after we let go of her. And I think a little bit of that, from that point on, I think sustaining the brand became tough. Now the brand has moved on. There are a whole lot of different celebrities that have come on board. Sara Ali Khan, for example, has been signed up recently. And again, I mean, I don't know if she's the right fit. And even from what I've heard, there's something very hoity-toity and a little snobbish about Sara Ali Khan. I just feel Kurkure is so desi. Kurkure is so, yeah, desi is the desiness of Kurkure somehow doesn't sit with Sara Ali Khan. Sara Ali Khan just doesn't feel desi enough. She just feels somebody who would, you know, who's always more appropriate in an English tea party. not in the, the dirty samosa and lick your fingers kind of a party.
That's what I was gonna say. This idea of licking your fingers is so iconically Kurkure. And in class, we've spoken a lot about this, about how that is an essential part of the brand. This was deliberately crafted, right? This idea of just licking your fingers.
I think it was, it's just such an E. When we read the script, there was this one particular commercial that we did where Boman Irani and Kunal Kapoor are in a bus. And Kunal Kapoor is eating out of that Kurkure bag. This is another commercial you should show. I'll send it to you. He's eating out of the Kurkure bag, and Boman Irani is sitting next to him, and he keeps trying to dip into the bag, saying, as though to, hey, can I also take? And this fellow keeps sort of shifting away as though not wanting to share. And then suddenly he says, ab to khatam ho gaya, sorry, ye to khatam ho gaya bag. And Boman Irani then says, nahi, abhi khatam nahi hua. And he yanks the bag away from him. First, he, you know, takes out the masala, like puts his finger into the, and wipes all the masala with his finger from inside the bag. And then unexpectedly, like the most shockingly, surprisingly, he grabs Kunal's hand because there was masala on his fingers, and then he licks his fingers. It's absolutely gross. It's the most. But I feel only Boman Irani could have pulled off something like that. Yeah, he pulled it off so well. And it's, I mean, if you read the script, it feels utterly gross. But that commercial is one of my favorite commercials. It's just so kurkure. It is just so kurkure. In the office, I used to have a lot of kurkure in office. And there is just no other way, to have kurkure but to be able to lick your fingers. And kurkure, the moment you open the bag, there will always be 2-3 hands that go into the bag, like everybody, and everybody's taking out, and it's okay. I remember I had a bunch of firangs, when we went started working on Kurkure innovations. There was this whole firang team, and we were trying to do innovations on Kurkure, on different, innovating on namkeens, and we were trying to do fusion matris, etc. And I was trying to explain to them what namkeen culture in India is. And they were trying to eat the bhujia with a spoon and eat it very neat and all. I said, no, it's not done like that. You've got to do this, and then whatever, you've got to wipe your hands on your trouser. If you don't wipe your hands on it, you just don't feel it wouldn't taste the same. Yeah.
It's actually so nice to know that there are brands out there that are doing it correctly like this, and there are brands that have got it all wrong. I think in class you showed the perhaps the most iconic example of a brand doing it wrong. I think it was Mariah Carey who had to take a chips and she just like nibbled at a piece of it. I feel like we should talk about brands itself. I think we maybe should have started with this. How would you define it? Quite simply, what is a brand?
It's very, very simple. I always say this, it's nothing complicated. It's the 5 words that first come to your head when you think of the brand. That is the brand. If I were to say Oreo, you'd say round biscuit, dark. It's a sandwich cookie. I can see the white cream inside it. There's some sort of a detailed design embossed on top of it. I'd think of the dunk lick. What is it? Dunk lick? Something.
Twist.
The twist,
Twist.
twist, dunk lick. And I'm thinking of purple. For me, that is Oreo. And that is a brand. A brand is everything that sticks in your mind, the first few words that come to your head when you think of a brand. There are brands that leave you absolutely blank. That means it's not really a brand. It's just a product with some sort of a name, but it doesn't evoke any associations. It doesn't evoke any imagery. It doesn't evoke any emotion. Then that means it's not a brand as yet. All powerful brands immediately get me to be able to articulate what I'm seeing in my head. It could be colors, it could be emotions, it could be associations, it could be celebrities, it could be anything. All of that we call the brand assets. And that is a brand.
I remember this one instance from your class actually. So we were preparing for your assignment, and our team was discussing about how do we prepare the brand book, which is something that we'll talk about. And they were saying maybe we should add this to the product or that to the product. And just remember these very words. It's not about that. It's about the emotion that you want them to have. Just a quick little break from the episode to say that if you've enjoyed this conversation so far, then please like and subscribe. I believe in first providing value and then asking for your subscription. And so if you feel like you've learned something and you have enjoyed this conversation, then subscribing genuinely helps. It helps me to continue bringing on incredible guests and creating more conversations like this. Now back to the episode. What is a brand book and why is it so important for brands to have?
Because a brand book actually just helps you document and templatize what might otherwise be loosely in your head as a brand manager. So as a brand manager, for example, on Kurkure, I instinctively look at a creative and I can say, this is on brand and this is not on brand. This script is on brand, this is not on brand. This packaging, this change, this, I can look at it and tell. But that's because I worked for as many years on Kurkure. Now, if I were to be suddenly taken out of the equation, then how does someone else who's come in new, let's say the agency were to change, all of the marketing team were to change, how would somebody who's entirely new be able to figure what's Kurkure and what's not Kurkure? That is why it has to be documented. Now, for all founder-led brands, founders know what they set out to build. So a founder will instinctively get it. But the problem is, as the organization expands, as more and more people start creating assets which all tie in, because for the consumer, this is not one department and that department and that department. The consumer is exposed to all of these messages together. And the consumer is forming impressions of the brand together. And we have having this discussion with a colleague of mine yesterday about how a lot of these new age brands, we forget that the brand is not just what I'm seeing on the website. The brand is not just the product that comes home. The brand is the integrated experience. So let's say if I've ordered a chair, the product looks fantastic. I've gone to their showroom, I've seen it, I've ordered it, and now it has to be delivered. It's going to come in different parts. Now there are various ecosystem partners. There is a courier company that's going to deliver it to me. There will be somebody from one of their branches, which is possibly closest to my house. There will be a mechanic that will come to assemble the chair. And what else? And of course, prior to that, I've had the experience of ordering, etc. Now, for me, the brand becomes that composite experience. If the courier company, for whatever reason, has been lax, has called me X number of times, or has not delivered on time, or has messed up on the order, or the mechanic and the head office has not been able to coordinate, all of that put together is the brand. I mean, today we order a lot of stuff, then there's stuff we return or stuff we exchange. In between, there could be not just the courier partner, there could be other associated partners. Who else? I mean, there'd be maybe you're partly interacting with the brand, you're interacting with the courier, you could be interacting with the head office, you could be interacting with customer service on their WhatsApp. If all of them are not giving me that same consistent experience, suddenly the brand falls apart for me. So it's like if I go and check into a Taj hotel, maybe that one intern who has just come in has messed up on some element of the housekeeping. To me, that becomes the brand. Now I'd say, oh, I was expecting this of Taj. This is Taj and I paid blah, blah. That's one intern and one guy up, but to me, that becomes the brand.
Even just the logos, I feel, are part of it. So the reason I wore this t-shirt today for this episode is just to show you. So it's a Levi's t-shirt, and Levi's, it's a little hard to show, but it has that logo with like a flat top and then slight arches on the bottom. So now FIFA has asked brands that are not sponsoring the matches to take out their logos in the stadiums across America. And Levi's did something very interesting. They just covered their banners with a white cloth. So the text is not readable because it's covered, but that shape is still visible. And so without having to pay FIFA, they have
is the true definition of a brand. I'm so glad you brought this up. This is brilliant. This is exactly it.
another perhaps one of my favorite classes in your branding and consumer behavior advanced class was the first one, because it clarified something that was really bothering me as an aspiring founder. So the first class, you talked about this idea of, do you need a USP, and you dismantled it. Could you please take us through that?
You see, the idea of a USP, and a lot of investors still ask, what is your unfair advantage? What is your competitive advantage? What is your differentiator? What do you do better? Now, the thing about a USP is that today your product may be undifferentiated, but your brand cannot be undifferentiated. Your brand has to mean something, which means you may have the there may be so many identical products in the category, and there are. In most blind tests, one wouldn't be able to tell the difference between two televisions, two phones, perhaps, two, two toothpastes, two toothbrushes, and blah, 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 blah. Virtually every two suitcases, two trolleys, two black trolleys. But it is a lot of the intangibles. I pay a premium for Sony because it's a Sony. It's a Sony. Now, for sure, there may be something superior, but it's not as though the closest competitor, or we all know that there are so many brands of televisions that come out of exactly the same factory, on exactly the same assembly line, on the same, and yet we pay a premium for a Sony. And that's true for so many other brands. So the idea of a USP as it once existed when Rosser Reeves first came up with this concept of a unique selling proposition. It said you have something that the consumers desire, that you have uniquely, and that your competition does not have. Now, in today's world, to come up with something that the consumer wants, that you can do uniquely, and that the competition does not have is very, very difficult. It's very difficult. So what is the best that you can do is to make your brand remarkable, which is the concept of the purple cow in Seth Godin's book, and his whole philosophy about, can you become the purple cow? Can you make sure that your brand is remarkable? Today, the worst epidemic that brands face is that they're not even rejected. They're simply afflicted by indifference. You walk past and you don't notice. You scroll past and you don't notice. You don't remember. I was having this conversation a couple of days back on jewelry. Some design of jewelry I was seeing, and some pair of earrings. I remember the design of the earrings that the brand name didn't stick at all. I just remember the design of the earrings. I want that pair of earrings. Now I'm only concerned with what I saw. I couldn't care what brand it was. Now that just means that I want the product and not the brand. The brand didn't make an impression on me, but the product has stayed. And today look at the whole world of lab grown diamonds today. Diamonds are exploding, but how does a brand in this whole explosion of lab grown category, how does a brand stick in your mind? How does in the jewelry brands for the likes of us in the South, of course, there are all of those, there are innumerable number of brands, but and actually it's not the designs. They all flourish on trust. They all flourish on certain kinds of imagery attributes that they've built with their audiences over a period of time. But for people like us who are not hardcore jewelry buyers, who buy one piece or two, for cosmetic reasons, and we're not the kinds who are getting married every second day or whatever else, for us, it's just impossible. Like, how do you, is there really any differentiator between different jewelry brands? If I were to put this pair of solitaires versus this pair of solitaires, they're identical. It wouldn't matter. I just like this pair, and so I'm buying them. That's it. Other than Tanishq, actually, there is no other real brand that really means anything, for me at least, in the world of jewelry. Other than Tanishq, there is no other brand that has made any impression on me. So they're all products.
So then, in these brands that come to work with you, or rather solicit your help, is this the biggest mistake that you see? What are the biggest mistakes? This, I'm assuming, being one of them.
100%. is that they don't realize what is it. I mean, before the product, the product is almost incidental. If you have to, if you have to build a brand, if you have to build a business in the long term, if you have to have longevity, if you have to have a sustainable platform for growth, people have to be willing to pay for the brand. That exact pair of solitaires may actually be 1.5 times the price at a Tanishq. I'll happily pay that premium because it's a Tanishq, because I trust them. So, uh, you know, how does one build an iconic brand? The thing is, even before one sells the product or as one is crafting a business, a lot of people feel, acha brand one to kuch fuzzy business hai, wo to baad mein dekh lenge. You know, first, which is not wrong. Of course, you've got to get business going. Getting business going is not easy by any stretch. But the fundamentals of what it takes to build a strong brand has to be embedded in the back of the mind of founders or of any new business. You have to know what is it that you're building towards. Even for established companies today, you see the big legacy companies like a Colgate or a Pepsi or a HUL or whatever, launching a new brand is very, very, very difficult. If they do have to expand their portfolio, they do it most likely with one of their current brands established, because it takes a long time for a brand to actually get embedded in the consumer's mind, for it to acquire values, for it to acquire associations and personality, which is very, very distinct. Now, how does one do that? One has to go through the hard, painful work of being able to put down, like I was doing this exercise with a bunch of entrepreneurs in a workshop. Just being able to write who is my consumer is a very, very daunting, difficult exercise. Who is my consumer? Because for any F&B product, if you were to ask any entrepreneur, who's your consumer? Oh, it's the health conscious consumer. Everybody is health conscious, for God's sake. That's just everybody on the planet. That cannot be. Nobody say, "Oh, I'm all junk." Nobody today is saying that. So it's just very difficult to be able to write down who is my consumer, what are the choices I'm making, what am I willing to sacrifice, what am I willing to not be. For example, which is there a single desserts brand today that's saying I'm all 100% indulgence, I'm just gorgeous, rich, delicious, indulgent taste, and don't come to me for anything but taste, and make sure that after you have a tub of my ice cream, you will have to get yourself a new wardrobe. No brand today is saying that.
So I hope to see that, like brands that are confident in their identity, basically. I think a lot of challenger brands try to do that. I would at least assume so.
Not conflict. What challenger brands try to do is to get into your mind by changing something in the established category codes that gets you to look at them, that makes them remarkable, that makes one stop and say, oh, I didn't expect that of a namkeen. Oh, I didn't expect that of a geometry box or of anything. Something that every geometry box looks the same. Every vacuum cleaner until Dyson came looked exactly the same. Every vacuum cleaner had to have a bag that collected the dust. But he challenged that. So is there something that the consumer would value that you can challenge, is what makes challenger brands. And that does not always have to be a product attribute. It doesn't have to be. It could be about the way you present it to the consumer. It could be about what you do. There was this beautiful concept of pizza on wheels. I don't know why it died. Probably they couldn't track. But the idea of it, the fact that when I order a pizza, by the time it comes home, it's limp. And it's not the pizza experience that I'd have at the restaurant. So the guys say, you know what, after you place the order, the pizza will cook in the oven while it's on the way to you. So it's actually a traveling oven. So by the time it reaches your doorstep, it's straight out of the oven. It's such a beautiful concept. It's the same pizza. It's just they've solved for what you would really value.
Do you think purpose driven brands, or rather brands where purpose is a big part of the brand, what space do they have in today's society?
Purpose is hugely overvalued. And I don't know why now suddenly everybody seems to be burdened with this idea that every brand must have a higher purpose. Just being able to make profit and being able to offer the consumer a good product that satisfies their needs is purpose enough. Why does one need any higher purpose than that? I mean, we're all, after all, in the business to make money. But now, after HUL CEOs made those grandiose statements about everything with purpose and all our brands will have purpose, and then suddenly everybody changes choosing the whole concept of purpose has been so twisted out of, it's just so misunderstood, because purpose cannot be at loggerheads, or it cannot be divorced from what your product intrinsically offers. If I have a soap that cleans my hands, that kills germs, your purpose cannot be about saving tigers in the forest. Your your purpose, and which is why actually Lifebuoy is one of the few brands that has actually understood and done purpose really well. So Lifebuoy says my purpose is to kill the disease that comes from dirty hands, because most of the diseases that we you know that we are inflicted by are because we have dirty hands going into our mouth. And which is why this whole custom has been born, not this, that you come back from outside and the first thing you must do is to wash your hands. Your mothers always ask you, "Acha, bahar se aaye ho, pehle haath muh dho." There's a very, very simple logic to that. And Lifebuoy said that there are X number of deaths. There are so many deaths. There was a number, there's some startling statistic to it, that there are X number of kids who never reach the age of 5 because they're afflicted by diseases that could be prevented by something as small as just washing your hands after play, or, you know, or from time to time. Just keep your hands clean. It could be as little as that. And that is what Lifebuoy is chasing. That is spot on understanding of what purpose is. But when purpose becomes forced, when purpose is misaligned or not connected with your functional attributes, or what you actually solve for as a product, then it becomes fake. And consumers today are intelligent enough. A lot of brands actually discount the consumer's intelligence, but the consumers are able to see through the fakery.
I think since you mentioned Lifebuoy, I think one of the good things they've done is this. It's almost become a verb. Like when you come home, at least the advertisements led you to say, "Have you washed your hands with Lifebuoy?" Lifebuoy say, "Haath dhoya kya?" Uh, I think also I have to mention, since you mentioned Lifebuoy, could you talk about the example from the Kumbh Mela and how they branded the rotis? Because that's the most genius marketing that I've heard of.
Yeah, there wasn't that was it was so simple and so brilliant. They were giving rotis because everybody needed something to eat, and they put the reminder message. It's also a great example of media. People forget media is not TV ads and newspaper ads and and social media. Media can be anything at all. Over there, that Lifebuoy printing the message of wash your hands with Lifebuoy in Hindi, whatever that exact message was, stamped on the roti, was, it did two things so well. Contextually, it was giving the brand message where it mattered most. And number two, it was the best use of media. Any amount of screaming from mountain toy, any amount of TV ads in that context would have been an utter waste of money. They used it for them, their media, their TV spot was the chapati. So they were giving away free chapatis. The chapati was the media. Now that is really, really smart thinking, really smart thinking, both in terms of messaging and media. The fact that the message of wash your hands was stamped on the chapati, because Kumbh is more than anything else, it's the biggest germ fest now. So uh, contextually, Lifebuoy sits so spot on well there. Got to wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. How would you remind them? Put it on every roti.
Like I'm sure anyone who has eaten or who will eat a roti, if they see something written on it, will definitely read it. Right?
It creates talkability. You won't forget about it. And it is absolutely the right time. It's like this is the hardest part of media planning. How do you land the message at a time when the audience is listening, when the audience is receptive to the message, when the message makes most sense in that moment? Most of the time, most of the advertising that we're seeing, we're numb to it because it doesn't concern me right now. It either doesn't concern me at all or it doesn't concern me right now. Just that is the biggest challenge for any media planner. To be able to crack that is absolute gold.
I have two more last questions for you. All right. You have your own consultancy firm, Cherry Peach Plum. How conscious were you, given that you know so much about branding, about crafting that brand, and where did the podcast fit into that larger branding planning?
My own podcast?
Yeah.
Actually, my podcast started out because I wanted to learn from the founders that I was interviewing. For me, it was just a way of being able to reach out to them and learn from them on what's happening. I remember one of my early episodes with Shankar, the founder of Plum, when I was trying to figure out what is the whole performance marketing about. And my question to him was exactly that. The whole podcast was built on exactly that. You explain to me this concept of performance marketing. What do you understand of it? How does one get it right? How do you tweak your commercials? How much do you spend on it? How do you know what you're spending on it is enough, not enough? And that is how it started out, because that was my audience in terms of people I wanted to serve. And so I said, why don't I just reach out to them and ask them what they're doing, and why don't I learn from them on what seems to be the most logical fit with what I myself can offer or can build on from my years of experience. That's how the podcast came about to be.
Okay, final question. This is a closing tradition I have on this podcast. I ask every guest, if you had access to billboards across the world just for one day, what is the message that you'd put up there?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. In the context of how much rubbish there's happening in the world with all of these wars, and I'd say, let there be one God, and let that God just be love and respect. Can we all just love and respect each other and screw everything else?
What a beautiful thing to end on. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, I have three small requests to ask you. If you enjoy listening to the episode, then please subscribe. Second, please share this with someone who you think will find it valuable. You see, a lot of effort and time goes into creating these podcasts. And so by sharing it, you'll help me reach new audiences, and that'll help keep the show alive. Third, please tell me your thoughts. You can reach out to me on social media, on email, and so on, and tell me what you enjoyed, what you didn't like, and new guests and episodes that you'd like to have discussed on the podcast. Again, thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.